A very warm good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, viewers. I'm Matthias Aufiku, news editor of the Namibian Sun newspaper. Welcome to another edition of the Evening Review show. Well, tonight we speak politics. Of course, politics is part of the daily discourse in our country. And for that, we have in studio the leader of the official opposition, Mr. McHenry Venaani. Welcome, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm obliged to be with you tonight.
No, it's always good to have you in studio. Well, you had a press conference earlier today tackling some issues well related to Parliament, your party, of course, stemming mainly from utterances made by the Independent Bidders for Change leader, Dr. Panduleni Itula, regarding the legality of the marriage between your party and the United People's Movement during the 2019 elections. And can you just give us a brief summary as to what was discussed at the event earlier today?
Well, I think, thank you very much, and thank you very much to the listeners. We need to put the Constitution in context. And by putting the Constitution in context, I want to remind viewers that one do not quote the Constitution you don't imply what the Constitution says. It's explicit. What it says is what it means, because it's a supreme law of the country. Now, what we addressed this morning are three issues. One is that the PDM Alliance was formed, came into marriage. We submitted our agreement to the ECN under Section 144, subsection 4, that allows an alliance, political parties of different political persuasion to come together to institute a form of a marriage for them to have political influence in the country, and that is what we did. We conformed by it. We were delayed by answering Dr. Panduleni Itula of IPC because of the fact that he challenged the Electoral Commission, and the Chief Referenda Officer is the first person to reply. And they have replied to him saying that PDM and UPM has complied under Section 144. He is relying wrongly on Section 143, which speaks of a major, if parties come into a coalition of a major of two parties. But Section 144 allows room for parties to be able to come together without deregistering themselves and without them having a need to recreate a new name. So in the alliance agreement now between UPM and PDM becomes a legal document at the ECN, because the law says, the alliance agreement says the two parties agrees to use the name PDM and its presidential candidate as the name to be voted for. So that alliance is already agreed on a name, and the name is already existing. So there was no need for us to start a new party, because the name already exists. So the arguments of Honorable Itula are very nefarious and very petty, to say the least, coming 4 years down the line as we are going to election, saying that PDM should be deregistered and ECN has not done its work. Secondly, Dr. Itula is also very wrong. He's confusing two matters, and I want to put them in context. He's confusing parliamentary systems with the interpretation of the Constitution. You see, in Namibia has a hybrid political system. Hybrid in the sense that our presidential system is derived from the American system, but half of it is derived from it. And our parliamentary system is a Commonwealth system. One of the arguments that he uses, he says, under subsection 28, under section 28 of the Constitution, a president of a party cannot run for the presidency. His argument is very flawed. It's flawed in this sense, that how did President Sam Nujoma become president of Namibia? President Sam Nujoma was voted as a member of parliament in a constituent assembly, and the constituent assembly elected a member of parliament. And that's how he went to become the president of the country. But there was no question of separation of powers, because when you are elected into one position, you elect. Nobody can be elected in two positions at a time. You can't occupy both. The same section 28 speaks of our vice president, and that's why I'm saying our presidential system is not a fully American-style system.
Yeah.
Because in America, your vice president is voted directly by national suffrage. There is a ticket. You go under a ticket, it's a Hage, Bumba ticket, or Venaani, Jennifer Fanani, every ticket. There is no ticket in our politics.
Yeah.
But our constitution under section 28 says a vice president is elected from members of the National Assembly. So to argue impliedly, he's saying impliedly that that rule says you can't run for both. In all Commonwealth countries, in South Africa, for President Ramaphosa to be a president, he's a member of parliament. For the president of Botswana, Masisi, to be a president of the country, he's a member of parliament. Their system is both Commonwealth and presidential. Now, our system is presidential only to the head of state.
Yeah.
Now, I run for the presidency of the country and stand as a leader or a member of the National Assembly. If I am elected in one of the two of the positions, I leave one, just as the president nominates his vice president from the National Assembly. So the minute that the president nominates you as a member of the vice president, as a vice president of his government, you leave parliament, and there is no separation of powers problem, because Nangolo Mbumba has left parliament as a legislator and went. Now his argument says you can't run for both simultaneously. Now in countries where you can't, where you have presidential systems like the Constitution of Kenya, I think under Article 13, says a member who wishes to run for the presidency of Kenya shall not be allowed to run for any other office. That's an explicit provision of the Constitution of Kenya. So Raila Odinga cannot run for governorship, he cannot run for a seat. But where the law does not speak explicit, you can't quote a constitution impliedly. So Dr. Itula to say that Honorable McHenry Venaani shouldn't have run for president and be allowed to run for National Assembly is his own interpretation. In the American system, you can't. Trump or Biden cannot run for the presidency of America and run for Congress. There is an explicit provision in their constitution that bars them to do that. In our constitution, we are not barred. Let's move to the next question. Dr. Itula make a very interesting assertion, saying that our cabinet ministers in our system are ex officio members of the legislature. He's wrong. In the Commonwealth system, the paramount premise of the Commonwealth system is that you must be, for you to be a minister in Namibia, you must be a member of parliament, voted. But he's confusing the American system. The American system allows you to be an ex officio member of the legislature in the event that Secretary Blinken wants to go and inform the Congress or Senate on the war of Ukraine. He's allowed to come. Now, our members of cabinet are directly elected as members of parliament. Go to another system where Commonwealth is derived from, the British system. A prime minister of Britain comes from parliament. He has a constituency. Sunak is a constituency leader first and foremost, and then a prime minister. All his cabinet minister. Where I agree a very bit with him is, how do you manage the separation of powers doctrine as enshrined by Montesquieu and Locke that wrote exponentially about it? How do you make sure that you do not have a executive members that exceeds dominance in a legislature? And that discretion in our constitution is discretionary powers that lies with Hage Geingob. He is given a parliament of 108 members. By having a cabinet of 108 members, he should not appoint more than 60% or 55% of those members into the executive. Then there is an erosion of power. But if you start saying our cabinet ministers are ex officio, they are not. The only ex officio members, mind you, are cabinet ministers appointed by Geingob. It's the 8 members that he appoints directly to parliament. But before he appoints them as ministers, they must be sworn in as members of parliament. But they have no voting right. They are the only ex officio member. So some of the arguments that he was quoting, paraphrasing the constitution, going back and forth, they are systemic in their nature. And he's not the first politician to do that. There are a number of MPs over the years that have always made this argument that why should Namibia not have ministers that are not members of parliament in order to have a direct separation of powers? It depends on the system that you adopt. And if you look at what our constitution writers wrote, they meant to have a hybrid political system where you have a presidential system, American style, that is directly voted through national suffrage, and the National Assembly that is voted through a proportional party list system.
Yeah.
So for Honorable Itula, with all due respect, to come and claim that the PDM UPM is not an officially registered party, the ECN has answered him. They are agreeing with us because we have made that deposition with the agreement with them and everything. So PDM, UPM are in an alliance. We need to continue working. And I think one of the issues that I raised today is that we need to really level up the political transaction in this country. It's very pity for my brother Itula and myself to start arguing over existential matters of political parties. What we need to talk about is that as people that want a better Namibia, a country that moves forward, a country that has infrastructure, a country that has a health system working. Shouldn't we talk about? One day I sent him a message and I said, my brother, let's talk about coalition building in this country so that we remove this regime that you want to regime. Now people, instead of us having a very heightened worry about the socio-economic trajectory of this country, the young people that do not have jobs, the agricultural sector that is not mechanized, the jobs that are not created, the food security. There is Mashare, you wrote a very big story about Mashare that is lying down. These are opportunities that we should grab and say, what is the future plan of the opposition taking the country forward? Yeah. And one of the things that should be in that transaction is really for parties to come together and say, what is it that we can do to unbundle the power that is? Now, the argument has been always, what unites us to fight Swapo? I think the socio-economic conditions of this country should unite all political parties. We can have differences on an economic policy, or we can, and it has been proven globally that parties from the left and the right has come together and converged in one government. Angela Merkel for a long time has led a government, something unheard of, for a stable government of SPD and CDU. Yeah. So I am saying to political leaders in this country, even to Dr. Gaingop, the other day he was talking about historiography, about what was happening in the history. We should be occupied by the central question of Namibia, Kwafat as the developmental state. Where do we take our people from? You have 43% of your people having no toilets. You have people having no homes. These are issues that should concern. So I think sometimes when politicians are talking and I'm listening, I'm wondering, are we really in the service of people, or are we in the service of just poking fun of each other and bickering those matters that doesn't change the life? How does PDM existential constitutional matter of whether it applied or not applied changes the lot of the people of Namibia? Yeah. How does the history of Namibia changes the lot of Namibia? Yeah. So sometimes I really want to see a transactional politics that is heightened on the question of development and taking our people forward. So
how would you describe your relationship at the personal level with Dr. Itula and also at party level? How would you describe that relationship?
Look, I am a person who God has imbued with a very high level of emotional intelligence. I can talk to Itula over the phone. We make jokes. When I meet him at a funeral, I'll go to him. He's older than me, so I go to him. I make a point to go and greet him. So I have a reciprocal relationship with him. I have no problem. With any person, with Gaingop, with Swapo, with any person, I can keep relations. I know how to manage human relations, so I have no personal problem. But we ought to really heighten the political debate. The political question is the complex political question is too dire to me for us to really go into this pre-election mudslinging campaign. I think the politics of this country, 33 years after independence, we cannot go backward to the politics of 89 or 97. We are having issues that we need to look. We look at the oil resources. None of us, we are talking about, let's renegotiate our oils. Surely all opposition should agree to say that let's open the deals and renegotiate a better deal for our country. These are conversations that I think we are imbued with highly land politicians that has come on the board, experienced people. Surely we should heighten that level of politicking rather than talking about this thing. And I told the press conference, it's my last time for me to really respond to this petty politics, because my focus is let's get the country on track.
We'll head for a short break quickly. I want us to come and talk about coalition politics, because a pertinent issue that came out of your statement was where you say that only through coalition would the opposition be able to remove Swapo from power. Some may see that as a concession already, even before the elections has taken place. So just want you to put your thoughts in order, and we'll discuss it after the break. Well, to our viewers, we wait for a short break, and we'll be back to continue this conversation.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My .NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
Well, we're back from the break. Honorable Venaani, you continue to speak of coalitions, but we know what happened in the past. Just recently, we can even go down to regional and local authority. Yes, and we've seen how local coalitions have not worked. Why are we still pushing for this? Is there no other mechanism?
I tell you, I am a realist and imbued with a number of years of experience of politics, and I hold heightened debates with serious senior leaders of nations across the world. You see, our easiest way to unlock a regime that has entrenched itself in this country is for parties to work together. Now, I tell you, coalitions are difficult to manage. They are difficult to manage, but they are the best, easiest ways to unlock a regime such as ours. I am speaking to my brothers in Zimbabwe. I said, look, the division that you have in Zimbabwe, the opposition is much stronger in Zimbabwe than here. Last time they had 49%, but yet they have divisions in the opposition. And I tell them that why not consolidate everyone against a regime that has entrenched itself over 40 years? If you don't do that, your chances become slimmer. So as a political realist and experienced person, if parties do not really, if we really want to unlock this country regime out of power, working together is a route to go. It's the easiest route to go. Parties alone can win power, but it could take them longer. And the statistics are showing us that it could take us much longer. Now look at coalitions. City of Windhoek couldn't work because we couldn't manage human relations.
Does that mean you guys didn't have a common purpose to grow the city?
No, it's just human relations. There was parties that came to the fore. They didn't have they didn't know how to manage relations, and they were changing partners every time now and then for their own end.
So how would you manage them going forward?
Let me tell you, we have a coalition that you don't talk about.
Yeah.
For the last 15 years, there is a coalition between PDM and UDF in Kunene. Kunene is one of the best run regions in the country in terms of administration wise, in terms of projects that are implemented. They just now had a problem with because of some disputes with conservancies and so forth. $56 million came back. But look at that coalition between two parties. That for 15 years we could have managed that relation, and it is still intact. That the opposition has been, that's the longest governed region of the opposition. So managing each other is important. Of course, the government also, in terms of their developmental agenda, where there is opposition governing, they give lesser money of capital projects and so forth to staff the regions. But that is one example of working together. Now, City of Windhoek did not work, but in Walvis Bay, there is a coalition between a number of parties, PDM, IPC. That coalition has been holding on. It's a good example. So I think we should learn from the building blocks of where it can work. Even the government of Israel that has been in coalition in and out, there is always shaky ground. But that is the best. If you look at the political reality and the dynamics of our country, the easiest route for opposition to uproot Swapo is through talking to one another and engaging. Even strategically going into alliances to say, okay, in these areas you have more resources. Why don't we use your agents there so that I deploy my money better there? Because you are talking about a regime that has been entrenched, that has entrenched itself, that has the financial muscles. If you go to any business person in this country and you want to ask $1 million, they look at you and say, Mr. Venaani, I really like your politics, I really like you, but if I give you $1 million and the government hears about it, I'll never have another procurement. So in terms of even resource mobilization, those are inherent political challenges that we are dealing with every day. So we must also look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what is the best way? Can parties talk together? And I'm ready to talk. I'm ready even to sacrifice the top position so that we have a better country. To me, it's not about Venaani. To me, it's about the question of Namibia and how do we move Namibia. If that is the best, easiest mean to get Namibia back on track, I'll do it. Any means that gets Namibia back on track, I'll do it.
Would you say that the recent inability to work together on the city council was a lost opportunity for the opposition parties?
I think it was a loss of opportunity, not only to the opposition, but to human relations. So because the leaders had issues with one another. The leaders of parties that are not even part of the council. It was not the councillors that could not work with each other.
So what issues did you guys have with each other? You are one of those leaders.
Well, some of the issues were just fearing one another.
I mean, if you can work together in a wrong, why can't you work together here? What is the difference?
That is the problem. That you see, the coalition configuration of City of Windhoek is very broad, and somehow we were a minority partner in this relationship. When we really, I personally attempted to say, guys, leave the pettiness, come to the table and talk about the real issues. But it was the relations of leaders that broke it. While you are talking to leaders, one is releasing a press release. This one is releasing a press release. So maybe there are new leaders on the block. There are people that do not know how to manage one another. But now that I think things are stabilizing, because of City of Windhoek mistakes, I think Wolfish Bay could hold on, because I think there were lessons to be drawn, to be learned. And look, everywhere where you have coalition governments, they're difficult. I'm looking at Malawi. Many people do not know that Malawi has a coalition government between MCP and the other party of the former vice president, who is the vice president now. And there are tensions there, but it's how they are managing it. It's about, politics is managing human relationships. Sometimes it's good to be the smaller one. It doesn't mean if somebody attacks you, you have to reply to it or something. Sometimes you need to lessen the burden to be able to give a better service to the people. So I am proponent, and I'm a still believer of saying we need to come to the table and talk about our future and be able to work together. PDM is a strong party. We will maintain our position. We will fight for it. But if other parties are ready to work together, we will look at that proposition, because it's the easiest route for us to, and it's out of experience that we are saying it.
So what do you make of critics saying that it's primarily the hunger of power of opposition parties that is the cause of why coalitions cannot work in Namibia?
Well, I do not identify with that sentiment, primarily because my assessment was that coalitions, the first one that was tried at the highest level was City of Windhoek. And I don't think it was a matter of power so much. It was a matter of who says what when. And I tell you, 50% of the problems that were at City of Windhoek were not council related. They were personality related to leaders of political parties. And that's an unfortunate reality. One person doesn't consult, the other one does what he wants, da-da-da-da. And because people don't know each other, the instruments of managing became very difficult, because people don't know each other. And where there were new players on board and so forth. So I don't think it's so much about power hungry. If opposition politicians were real power hungry, they should have converged to work together to get power. Because I tell you, it's better there is a saying, an old Latin American saying, it's better to be a tail of a lion than a tail of a mouse. So for the ambition, because when I look at some of these conversations that we are having with one another as parties, the ambition is for people to be in parliament. I have been there. My ambition is to get power, to be in power, to be able to influence and direct the country into a path that will change the lot of the citizens of this country. And I think every person that has that dream of trying to change Namibia, the conversation of surely talking to one another should be put on track, so that we continue to do that.
As we wrap up, in the context of City of Windhoek and additional elections, as opposition, how do you want the voters to give you $100 if you couldn't manage $10?
Well, I think the politics is trial and error. There is a governance in the city council. It's not that there is no governance. There is a governance, but of course Swapo came at the back door and got the opportunity, and they are in majority now. There is a governance, the management of coalition governments all over the world, and I'm talking about countries that have managed them over years, the Nordic countries. There's always someone who has been bigger to manage processes. And I think the political dexterity that many of us have would be able to manage even the affairs. Even if you create a minister of human relations, if I can do that, I can be able to manage any coalition in this country, and it can be able to work, because the people should come first. It shouldn't be what I want as Venaani or PDM. It shouldn't be about what we want. It should be about what is it that we are delivering in the best interest of our people and country.
Yeah. Just lastly, of course, with the elections coming up next year, higher unemployment, very rife unemployment rates, sanitation issues and everything. What do you think are the central themes for those who would be running, of course, including for yourselves, that should be looked at? Because I'm sure some of the voters are probably at the stage where they think, why should we go and vote?
Well, I think the Nigerian elections is a very sad example where you have a country of over 200 million people and less than 27 million people goes to the poll. And its people are finding politicians irresponsible because of what we are conversating, the things that we are conversating. But to answer your question in context, is that next year would be a year where the election will be determined by young people. The young people are the next determiner, de facto determiner of the next election. And if young people wants to see change in their life, it is incumbent upon them to queue up and vote for that change that they want. If they feel Venaani is the man that to bring that change, let them do that. But the greatest concern is that because of hopelessness, a lot of voters no longer trust political parties. So we are confident because we have started our own rebuilding our relationship with communities too early. For the last 3 years, we are in the trenches, making donations to school, donations of cleanings. We are really in the minds of the people. No one can go and accuse PDM, for example, that you're only coming for an election. But we must remember, and the Nigerian example, on the African continent, it's the worst election that we've ever seen, where 26% of the population goes to the polls. Yeah. And if that happens in this country, it's bad for our democracy. So leaders must up the conversation and make sure that we talk about the issues that really matters. There are people living in riverbeds. There are people without toilets for years. There are people living in shanty towns. There are people with no jobs. We can't be leaders and be conversating and bickering about your watch is more nicer than mine. And just we can't fight for that space. We should fight for the space of the people, and that space of the people should take us going forward. We shouldn't fight amongst ourselves over petty things. And I tell President Gangov all the time that the other day in Parliament he was joking that you are not my equal. I tell him that it's not about who is more equal to the other. It's about what is it that we could do for the betterment of our country. Our country should come supreme. Our people should come supreme.
Okay. Honourable Venaani, thank you very much for your time this evening. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
To our viewers, that's it from the Evening Review team. Have a pleasant evening. See you again tomorrow, same time, same place.